Hey everyone, Spicy Toast Gaming here. I hope you're having a great day and I hope this video can make it a little bit better. Today is patch notes day, a lot of changes. We didn't get the new region that will probably come out next patch, but we did get a lot of changes for Path of Champions. A lot of big buffs, nerfs, and then just some adjustments. Now, if you appreciate all this daily Path of Champions content, definitely like and subscribe. Also, tomorrow I am going to be starting to stream. So my very first stream is going to be tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern time. We'll be testing out and playing with a lot of the champions that were changed in this patch. So definitely tune in if you're interested. It would be awesome to hang out with you. With that out of the way though, let's jump into these patch notes. So here is a graphic, pretty much the only thing that's loaded in. And so here you can see a quick glance at all the things that got changed. As you see, a lot of the buffs were to champions in Path of Champions, and also a decent amount of the nerfs are also relevant for Path of Champions, as well as some of the adjustments. We got a whole bunch of changes. This is really going to shake things up for Path of Champions. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the icons haven't loaded in. I actually waited a couple hours thinking that, oh, any minute they would pop in, because I know being able to see the actual cards helps out a lot. So unfortunately, they still haven't loaded in, which is fairly annoying. But these first changes here, these are all to the, well, not this one, but these ones up here are all to the different dragon boons. So when you play with Elder Dragon, when you play a unit that costs 6 or more, you also get a choice of what dragon boon to play on them. So essentially, they're just taking away 1 health from most of the different dragon boons that give you 1/1. So that is a little bit disappointing. Your units are going to be slightly weaker, but to make up with that, they are actually buffing up Elder Dragon, but we'll get into that later. Down here, this is also a nerf to Elder Dragon, but this card isn't in his starting deck, so it doesn't really matter. Enraged Fire Spitter. So this is the dragon that has the play effect of deal like 2 damage to an enemy and then like 2 damage to the enemy nexus, and it's getting its stats nerfed down to a 6/4. This is actually going to be pretty sad. This was a great card to get with your Volibear. Quite often when you would be manifesting Titanic units, that would be one of the ones you'd really pick up. So the fact that this isn't Titanic anymore is actually more of a nerf for Volibear, so that's a bit sad. Down here we have Morgana. They're increasing her level up to go to 10 targets instead of 8, so it'll take slightly longer to level up your Morgana. I don't think this should be the end of the world though. With Morgana, most of your power comes from just how much control you have. Now, while you do have a very strong level up, this shouldn't really cost you games. That being said, it is going to slow down the pace of your games because it's going to take even longer to destroy the enemy since you're not going to have that big attack as soon. So it will hurt you by making the games take longer, but you still probably win. This shouldn't really hurt your win percentage, but a little bit of a nerf right there. Honestly, for all the things for them to hit, this is probably the best. Next, we have changes to suppression as well as the Mage Seeker Inquisitor. Both of these involve curses, but they're not in the Morgana starting deck, and you don't really play with it very often, so not really gonna touch on it right now. Hate Spike, this is actually a change, so when it actually kills a unit, it's only going to give you a husk if Evelyn started with your deck. So again, it's not really going to impact Path of Champions at all. Hate Spike is still going to work the exact same way. It's just if you're picking this up in a shop and you're playing someone other than Morgana, now it's not going to give you a husk anymore. Yuumi, they are actually nerfing Yuumi. They're reducing down her health by 1. This will be a bit disappointing. With Yuumi, you really want to get ahead early and you want the unit you're attached to actually survive. So even though this is just 1 health really can be all the difference in those first couple rounds before you can really scale out of control. So again, not a massive change, but you will actually feel this one. Next up, we have Elder Dragon. So they buffed up his stats to now be 12/12 as opposed to 10/10. It is still overall a nerf since you're not getting those extra stats from the boons, and then that will also be affecting your other units as well. But it's nice that they tried to give you some amount of compensation, but probably won't change things too much for you. Aladdis the Gallant. This was another one you would pair with Elder Dragon, but it's not one that's in his starting deck. It's just getting 1 extra health, which is nice, but again, not that big of a deal. Next up, we have the Adroit Artificer. Now, this is one that is in Samira's support package, but it's not in her starting deck, and normally you don't pick it up. So it's getting 1 extra health as well, but again, not really going to impact us Path of Champions players. Blimp Pack Poacher, again, a card that's not actually really used in Path of Champions too much. So it's getting a slight adjustment, but not really going to be that big of a deal. Here is actually a pretty big change. So Kaisa is now going from 4-4 to 5-5. So while this is just an increase of 1 for her health and power, and while that is nice, the bigger thing here is that she can now easily get the Starforged Gauntlets activated. So you can equip Starforged Gauntlets plus Luminous Orb to get her to Titanic, so she can have that +1 starting mana. That might actually be a pretty big deal. Kai'Sa is a bit of a ramp deck and can be pretty slow, so being able to start with 1 extra mana and start playing your bigger units and try to get that evolve off a little bit faster, that could be very beneficial for you. We will be testing that out and doing a video on that in the next coming days, so definitely look out for that. Tomb Raider Barbara, again, not really one that we play with in Path of Champions. Nila, they're reducing her level up condition to just draw 15 cards instead of 16. Again, a very small change that isn't really going to move the needle on Nila at all. You still have to draw 15 cards, so just making it be 1 less than 16, I don't think will impact your gameplay too much. I doubt you'll really even notice this one in most situations. Udyr, giving him 1 extra health, so he'll be a little bit harder to take down if Aurelion Soul summons him. So the Bushwhack Trap, this is actually in Nidalee's starting deck. This is the landmark that used to give vulnerable, but now it's grant vulnerable, so that's permanent vulnerable. That is quite nice. You're still not really going to be prioritizing playing this landmark in most situations, but giving it this buff is quite nice to have. General of the Dunes, another card that's not really in Path of Champions, so it doesn't really matter for us. Nami, this one is actually pretty big, so they're buffing Nami to make your level up condition just play 5 spells. Now, while it is just reducing the condition by 1, there's a pretty big difference of reducing it by 1 when you're at 16 and reducing it by 1 when you're at 6. So the fact that this is going from 6 to 5 will be very good. One of the relics you'd like to get with Nami is the Deceiver's Crest. When you level up, you create a copy of your champion spell. So this will just make that relic even better for your Nami. You can level her up even faster and really put the pressure on early. Nami was already very good, and this is just making her even better. So that will be pretty fun to play around with. Delve into the past, doesn't really matter unless you're playing Rise, which isn't in Path of Champions. Now, adjustments. These are going to be pretty interesting. So up first, we have Samira, very strong champion, but has been nerfed many times in the recent patch notes. So it used to be when I'm summoned or strike, create a flare in hand, and then if you already have one, reduce its cost by 1. Now it's plunder or strike, create a flare in hand if you don't have one. So you don't have that cost reduction. Now that flare, if you don't remember, it's deal 1 to the enemy nexus, or give your Samira challenger for the round. They nerfed it a couple patch notes ago to make its cost go to 2, and down here you see they reduced its cost back down to 1, which is a pretty massive change. So while up here, while this is a bit of a nerf, it still is not going to be that big of a deal. Normally the flare you make when you're first summoned, you don't really need it anyway, so just making flares when you're getting strikes off is fine, especially since the flares are now going back down to 1. That is a very big deal. And then Dashing Dandy, this is the unit that is in your starting deck. As you see, he used to be a 3-cost 1/4, and then Plunder, grant me 3 power. Honestly, you rarely played him. He was pretty bad, and so normally you just play some of your other cards. But now he's a 4-cost with a 2/4 stat line and Plunder double my power. So that will be quite good for Path of Champions, because now you can go ahead and get any items on him so that when you play him, double my power will actually be a pretty strong effect. So there's a lot more potential and makes him much better of a champion. Samira will be fun to play around with and see how these changes really affect her. Overall though, just really awesome that they're reverting that flare nerf, making it go to 2 cost, made it almost a dead card. So here, a change to the Buried Sundisk doesn't really matter for Path of Champions because the only Sundisk deck is Nasus, and he just immediately summons him once you kill 10 units, and he summons it already leveled up, so not really gonna matter for us at all. Valley of Imitation, again, another landmark that's not really used in Path of Champions. Predict, this actually will be a bit of an interesting change. So previously, every time you'd predict, it would shuffle your entire deck. Now it's not going to do that anymore. So this can be a little bit of an issue for some of your cards. Before, with it shuffling, it could really mess with the mysterious portals and the flash bomb traps, as well as potentially puff caps by just moving them all around. So not shuffling will make some of those abilities a little bit more consistent, especially ones that are like planting flash bomb traps in the top number of cards in a deck. However, the issue is, especially with Echo, there's some cards you have like Professor Von Yip, when he's the Fallen Feline, I believe that's the name of the card. That one puts these Hex Tech crystals in the bottom 10 cards of your deck. And the point is it puts those there, and then you have to actually predict to shuffle them around so that even if you don't see them in the predict, you know they're not stuck at the bottom of your deck. Whereas here, now you have to see them in a predict, otherwise you're not going to be able to draw them because they're going to be stuck at the very bottom of your deck. So that'll be a little bit rough. Next up, this is a massive change. So Master Yi, he is going from a 3 cost to a 2 cost. Now he's losing 1 power, but that doesn't matter. This is still, in my opinion, a massive buff. Just yesterday, I was actually preparing a Master Yi build, and I was really thinking how terrible it was that he had to be stuck at that 3 cost. Pretty much whenever you play Master Yi, you're trying to get some cost reduction through an adventure to get him down to a 2 cost, because being able to play him in the first round is such a massive deal, especially with some of the builds you like to run with him. So him going down to a 2 cost makes him so much better in Path of Champions. This is an amazing change for us. Master Yi video coming very soon. Divine Whirlwind, they're slightly changing this card, so they're increasing the cost to 6, but they're adding 1 damage to the Nexus. I would still say this is overall a nerf. This is Janna's one of her cards, where it is a fast speed removal where you can deal damage to a unit, also to the Nexus. Overall, it's a fun card, but it going to a 6 cost definitely is going to be a little bit rough. With Janna, you really want to play a lot of your cards for as cheap as possible, so it is going to make this a little bit more difficult to play. Next up, a big change that I know a lot of people are asking for, Thieves Tools. So this is the NAB. They're getting rid of it from a lot of the starting decks, and it's no longer going to be grantable from the Hex Tech Fabricator. Now, I actually wasn't one of the people that hated this power. I thought it could be pretty good, especially when you're going against some very annoying opponents, like stealing cards from Viego or Aurelion Sol could be pretty satisfying, but I know a lot of people hated it. But it is actually going to be quite nice that they're getting rid of NAB from a lot of these starting decks. So for the Darius deck, the Crimson Disciple, they're getting rid of the NAB and giving us a Dragon's Tooth, so 1/1 and Fury. That is quite nice. For Nasus, the Rune Runner, getting rid of it and getting a Savage Shield, so 1 power and 3 health. That is very nice. That's a lot of stats, much better than just having NAB. And the Rune Runner is already a pretty big card. I believe that's your like 5 cost. For Vi, your Veteran Investigator, instead of having Thieves Tools, you now have Shadow Totems. You're summoning another copy of that card. Even though it's ephemeral, this is going to be very good for you, really putting the pressure on early. So that is pretty awesome. And then for Kayn, your Noxian Defector, going to get that Savage Shield, so 1 power and 3 health. Overall, pretty massive change, really buffing up a lot of decks. And these are all decks that they're not S tier decks. Some of them are a little bit on the lower side. So buffing them all up and making their starting decks a little bit better is quite nice. All right, next up, they're changing some of the rarities for items in Path of Champions. And this is one where I really wanted to have these icons, so really annoyed that it's still not loading in. Eye of the Aspect, this is the power that could go on your landmarks, where when the landmark is destroyed, it creates a copy of it in your hand so you could play it again. So that used to be rare, is now going to common, which is actually quite nice. So Immortality, this is Game Start, heal your Nexus 10. This is going from a rare to a common. Mystic Meditation, this is one that reduces down the cost of all of the spells in your hand by 1 every round. So that's going from epic to rare. Elemental Winds, this is a really fun power. Increase the damage of all of your spells and skills by 2. So that is going from rare to epic. Pretty sad, because it would be really fun when you could get like 2 or 3 of these as a stack in a single round. A lot of fun. Disarmed, this one is reduce all of the enemies' power by 1. Nice power, but it's just going from rare to common, which does make more sense. Feral Senses, this gives you a 0 cost predict every round, and that's going from epic to rare. Makes sense. Then we have Inheritance. When one of your unit dies, all of their power then goes to one of the units in your hand. That's going from common to rare, which makes a lot of sense. Next up then, Lost Chapter. This is a pretty big nerf. So now it's not a summon effect, it's a play effect. So play, refill your spell mana, not summon, refill your spell mana. This is going to hurt for a lot of champions. LeBlanc, you really like this because every ephemeral copy of her you'd summon, always refilling your spell mana. You'd often want to play it on her. Was also nice for Nidalee. It's still going to be good for her, but you could summon multiple copies of Nidalee, and so getting that extra spell mana, also very good. Really was good for Nico, because you could play your champion spell, which costs 3, to summon another copy of her, which could then just refill your spell mana, so essentially you could get an infinite combo going fairly easily. And also was pretty good for Echo. Quite often you could play and summon ephemeral copies of him. So the fact that this is going from a summon effect to a play effect is going to kill it for many champions, which is quite disappointing. But it is understandable. It is a common relic, so having the common relic be as good as it was is understandable as to why they're nerfing it. That's almost about it. Just last up, the Disciple of Shadows, the epic relic offer. So being able to buy that relic with the real money in the Emporium, that offer is going to be leaving. So if you haven't bought it yet and you want to, hurry up and do that, because that's going to be leaving when the patch hits. Overall, a very impactful patch. Did not expect this amount of changes. A lot of buffs and nerfs to different champions, items, powers. It's really going to be interesting to see how these changes really play out in the game. So look forward to a bunch of videos testing out all the champions after the changes. That will be coming in the next couple days. And then again, I am actually going to start streaming tomorrow, which is February 7th at 7 o'clock Eastern time. So definitely tune in. We will be probably testing a lot of these changes there as well. All right, thanks for watching. I hope you have a great day.